Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. Listen, the extension of the deer season that I was just talking with William and Cayman about, take advantage of it. Go out there and enjoy one more weekend at hunting camp. And even if you don't help manage the population, which we hope you do, you can be spending one more weekend with friends and family, kind of soaking it all up. I think that's special, and that's one of the main reasons that I enjoy doing it myself. Listen, are you looking to purchase your perfect piece of hunting property, upgrade your farm equipment, or have you been dreaming of owning your slice of heaven out in the country? Look no further than Mississippi Land Bank for your financing needs. For more than 100 years, farming families and landowners in North Mississippi have turned to Mississippi Land Bank for all kinds of financial solutions, whether it's for land, equipment, or livestock. For more information, visit mslandbank.com or go by and see one of their friendly staff at any of their offices. Mississippi Land Bank, love having them as a sponsor of Super Talk Outdoors. So now let's move over to my good friend, Lake Pickle. He's with Open Season Property, just got a promotion with Onyx Hunts. We're going to learn about that here as well. And he's also got the great Speak the Language podcast that is nationally deployed and very popular. Lake, how you doing, my friend?
Man, I'm great. I'm happy to be back on. It's been a while. It's been a busy fall and winter in a good way.
Yeah.
But happy to be here. Happy to be here talking to you.
You've been rolling, man. Tell me about your new job at Onyx.
So basically, I'm managing the waterfowl side of the hunting business now. And so dealing with like brand partners, like we do a lot of stuff with Ducks Unlimited. We do a lot of stuff with Mossy Oak. And then working directly with some of our ambassadors, to some of our bigger ambassadors, like Barstool Outdoors, Daybreak Outdoors, just someone putting a more focused effort on the waterfowl side of the business, which has been a learning curve, because it's not something that I have been doing. So it's been a new challenge, which has been fun. It's been busy, but in a good, all in a good way. Not all good things.
You know, it occurs to me that Onyx, because you're so widely deployed, could begin to really be a great way to study data if there was a way to collect some of that data. But yeah, I could tell that you had gotten much busier. I mean, you love turkey hunting. In fact, you're super passionate about it. You love deer hunting, but duck hunting is kind of its own thing. It's really interesting, I bet, for you to begin to get into that part of the business.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a duck hunter. Like I started duck hunting when I was a sophomore in high school. Always loved it. And then I got the dog, which my dog Knox is 6 years old now. But throwing the duck dog into the mix, that's why I got so into upland bird hunting. That's what amplified my love for duck hunting. And it's something that I've done passionately for a long time, but definitely have kind of, I guess, just upped the intensity of it, especially with this new role, because there's just been stuff that's caused me to get out into the field more, which is great. And then just like traveling to work with, like say some of our partners, like I've had to go to Arkansas a couple times, which I dare not complain about that. But yeah, it's been busy, man. It's been very busy.
So you've had Onyx, Open Season Properties. You've got the podcast that's hitting on a lot of cylinders. How's the podcast doing?
Man, it's great. We're having a lot of fun with it. We actually recorded this morning, about right before I came on with you. Jordan just left because we're trying to stay ahead of the curve. And it's funny, we were talking today about kind of wrapping the fall and winter season up, and talking about what you were just had William McKinley talking on here about the season getting extended and what duck season looks like in retrospect, and just kind of a wrapping it all up and before we start looking forward into spring, which is coming up next. But
yeah, actually, he was in Benton County. You may have caught that part.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting some scrape samples, looking for CWD, and of course, Benton County is ground zero for the state. And I was asking them toward the end of the conversation. They're putting together a report that they'll be it's an annual report on CWD in Mississippi, and they'll be bringing that back to the Commission for Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And I'm looking forward to that, because I think we got to keep ramping up the conversation. I have a sense that we probably aren't talking about it enough, that we aren't educating about it enough. I know you guys have talked about that on your podcast as well. So it'd be really interesting to see what the latest is on CWD in Mississippi. And one of the good things about what they're doing is they're part of this national database, so we can see what's really happening all across the country and how Mississippi fits in, and the best practices that we're discovering and how we're deploying those best practices as we go forward. But I think we just got to keep that conversation going, don't you?
You have to, because it's like CWD, and you know this as well as anybody. CWD is such a polarizing subject and I think for the most part, if you don't keep that conversation going, like if you don't keep it on the forefront, then the folks that hate CWD thinks it's a hoax. They're like glad to see it not talked about. And then some folks that they don't necessarily think it's a hoax, but they're like, if you let it slip out of front of mind, we forget that it is an issue, which obviously I lean in the opinion of the biologist, and I think it's a very serious thing. It's a
Yeah,
very
yeah,
serious risk. And I hate to see it. I think we all hate to see it, but you have to believe in the work that folks like William McKinley are doing, and keep a pulse on it,
yeah.
the best way we can.
Well, the science around it is accumulating rapidly, and as I've said on the show many times, the goal is just slow the prevalence down, so we can give that science a chance to catch up, and hopefully that will happen. And it is it's a real challenge for the white-tailed deer hunting community, and it's one that we got to take very seriously. And Mississippi will continue, I think, to tweak things and move in the direction of doing everything in our power to deploy best practices to reduce the prevalence. So that Benton County, where they're doing scrape samples now, the prevalence of CWD there is incredibly high, and they virtually see no mature deer anymore, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah. One interesting thing I heard, Steve Ranella was talking about CWD, and he was like, trying to find ways to get people more concerned about it, because that is like one of the bigger hurdles. It's
Yeah, it
just getting
is.
people to admit, or say like, okay, this is a serious issue. Is in you were talking about just not seeing older deer there. Is he said I would like to see a data set. I don't know if there is one,
Yeah,
but if there was a data set where you could compare CWD prevalence to antler quality,
yeah.
because he thinks like the place where you have higher prevalence of CWD, I would think that your antler quality would trend downward.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
And if you
yeah,
could show that, then that alone would make people take it more serious, because it's like
yeah.
in the NDA, and quality is such a big thing now, and that's great. But you're going to have a really hard time managing for larger antlers and older age class if you can't get either of those. If CWD halts the antlers and the age, then you're
Yeah, and
there you go.
and listen, Cayman mentioned this. The other unknown, and currently there's no evidence to suggest that this is the case. But if there were to be impact on humans at any point in the future, that would be, I can't tell you how devastating that would be.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it
That's
is.
I mean, it really that's the thing that scares me the most,
Yeah,
obviously. Um, you just, there's not an answer yet. It hasn't happened yet, thank God.
yeah, yeah.
But
So
yeah,
we'll stay focused on this show. We won't be bogging down around it, but when this report comes out, for example, we'll do a deep dive on that, and continue to watch. The one thing that I've worked hard to help people understand is the sale and transfer of deer across the United States has been a very negative thing as it relates to increasing prevalence in certain areas that don't have it, and something we hopefully will never do here in Mississippi.
I yeah, I don't I could get on a whole soapbox about that subject. There's not a more proven vector than that.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
if and we've talked about this before too. Like if someone wants to fence their property and just use that as a management tool, go ahead. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what you're talking about either.
No,
But fencing a property and transporting live deer are two wildly different things.
they are. They
And,
are. And the deer breeders tend in Mississippi, they tend to convolute together breeding with high fence. And listen, I've talked to a bunch of high fence guys, and they don't like it. They don't like that this organization that seems to be representing the needs of breeders or the goals of breeders when they should really be focused on just keep those who want to have a high fence, want to do a better job at managing their deer. That's what they want to do. And in fact, some of them are thinking about taking their fences down. They just, it's just gotten harder it's hard to keep a fence impenetrable. I mean, it really is. There's too many things that can stop that.
Yeah.
But that's for another conversation. I was interested that you and I were chatting last week before I went up to camp, and you said that where you hunt, ducks were showing up, and I was getting reports from around, you say, the south to middle delta. I get up there, and ducks are starting to show up in the areas where I hunt. But it had been, other than opening weekend, it had been pretty much a dry hole, and that's so frustrating because once again, here we are at the end of duck season, and ducks are beginning to show up in certain areas of the delta, and it raises an important question: should we extend the duck season? I don't know the answer. I'm sure you don't either. But when we get back on the other side, we're going to chat a little bit about that with my friend Lake Pickle. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors from the Open Season Property Studio. Listen, again, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. In a world where honesty and dependability are rare, Austin Seals and Jordan Blissett at Open Season Properties stand out with their commitment to integrity and hard work. With a background in agriculture, science, marketing, and hunting land development, this team offers a real service that you can rely on when you're buying or selling real estate. Whether it's your family property or your first piece of ground, they understand the significance of every transaction, specializing in recreational land, poultry farms, investment properties, farm and timberlands, and more. They're here to meet your real estate needs. Give Austin Seals and Jordan Blissett at Open Season Properties a call today and experience the difference. Hey, listen, Lake, I had Thad Miller on recently to tell his story, but he's a super focused dude, isn't he?
He is. That is one of the more unique individuals, and I mean that in the best way possible, that I've had the privilege of getting to know. Just an incredible wealth of knowledge around property, especially recreational property, and he's one of those. He's truly one of a kind. Just
Yeah.
what he's been able to do and how he's been able to do it, and yeah, I've owe a lot. I've learned a lot from that guy.
Well, what he's done with Open Season Properties and the team that's come together around that is pretty impressive. It was a great story to tell. Hey, listen, I remember this farm that I leased in Chula. I went about 4 or 5 years ago to look at it at the end of February, and there was some flooded sheet water on some ag land right outside this. It's a tree farm essentially, and I saw thousands of mallards at every level of the sky, and also obviously resting on the water. But I mean, I've never seen so many mallards. But it was the end of February. That was what was so interesting to me. And then you go back and look at our experiences. The season has just gotten later and later and later. Now, there's all kinds of theories about migration and habitat, and we've had all those conversations before, and we're not trying to answer the issue today. But it certainly does raise a question. You got Missouri and Arkansas and other states that are having the same duck season we're having, and they're killing them like crazy. And then we're at the end of the season and just now seeing them. That's so frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating, and it seems like, I don't know. I mean, all the most of the experience that I have, it's all anecdotal and talking to people that I know that are also hunting in the Mississippi Delta or right along the river. Um, but the concern with me and with you too, I'm sure, is that a lot of us have the same story.
I
And like,
know. Yeah.
I mean, the story that you just told, I could tell a very similar one. I
Yeah.
mean, very, very, very similar parallels. Um, I just don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to it. I don't know the why. Um, I listen to a lot of podcasts of biologists. I look at a lot of research, and there's a lot of people scratching their heads like we are. But it's very frustrating. It's not, because it's like we all love, if you love to duck hunt, you love to see ducks. Obviously. Um, but sometimes it does seem like they get here right after it ends, you
Yeah.
know?
Like what's interesting. Look, let's say 2 weeks ago, one of the farms that I'll duck hunt occasionally. I enjoy going occasionally. But my buddies, they're all into it. They're mad at them in a big way, but they'll go and they'll kill a few wood ducks and maybe a gadwall or two, but then they look in the sky and this is blank, man. I mean, you might see some geese fly by, but this past weekend they looked up and they saw lots of ducks. Greenheads, pintails, the whole 9 yards. Some of them didn't come down, but it didn't matter. It was encouraging that you saw the ducks. I mean, they were, the migration was happening, but just happening late. So it's encouraging because it says, hey, man, that maybe next year it'll be different. If they looked up this past weekend and saw nothing but blue sky, it'd be very depressing with the season about to come to an end.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'll get Ed Penny and others on the show, and we'll talk more about what are the ramifications of this. But isn't it time? Even Will Primo said, man, the migration's shifted west. Something's happened.
Yeah, it's evident to me that something has happened. But I think, like anything else, there's never one thing. I think there's multiple factors at play here. I think a lot of it has to do with and it's a tricky subject. I think farming practices have changed a lot of it.
They have. Yep.
Because, and here's what I mean, again, like anecdotal experience, right? But I can remember places that I used to drive through when I would be going through the Delta, and I would see just driving down the highway, I would see flooded fields, I would see ducks, I would see crop stubble, and I drive some of those same fields now, and I see plowed up dirt with no water, no food, no anything, and that changes things.
It does. You were talking about lack of food. You've got warmer weather. I mean, come on, let's face it. Warmer weather up north is a big issue. We've had all those conversations, but those things all add up to what I call the reality. And the reality is the ducks are coming later. So if you're in the middle to lower Delta, your duck season is not good. And there's something that the federal government can do, something Mississippi can do, working with the federal government to change that. We ought to get focused on it. But we'll talk more about it in the future. You keep your eyes and ears open, and we'll talk more about it in the future show, Lake.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure to visit with my friend Lake Pickle. Listen, have a great weekend as an extended deer season, and always put safety first. God bless you, and we'll see you next Monday.